What would you do if you found out a 17-year-old kid could outthink Elon Musk? That's the question that broke the internet on a quiet Tuesday morning. 1 minute, you're scrolling through your feed, and the next, bam, a grainy TikTok clip of a teenager in a wrinkled hoodie casually dismantling one of the most complex physics theories of the decade goes viral. 10 million views in under 72 hours. No big production, no flash, just raw genius. And sitting in a conference room at SpaceX HQ, with screens blinking data on rocket propulsion and Mars habitats, Elon Musk hit pause on the clip. He leaned back, squinted slightly, then cracked a grin. Who the hell is this kid? The video opens awkwardly. A shaky phone camera. Some kid, skinny, quiet, standing in front of a whiteboard at what looks like a high school science fair. The caption reads, "He's got a 162 IQ. Watch what he says about entropy and time." Blew my mind. Flushed face fire. There's nervous laughter in the background as the boy pushes up his glasses and scribbles the words, "arrow of time," in blue marker. He begins, almost mumbling. If time's entropy increases in one direction, then technically, the universe doesn't move forward. It just unravels. We perceive direction not because time flows, but because disorder expands. Someone behind the camera whispers, "Wait, what?" But the boy keeps going. In less than 90 seconds, he outlines a theoretical framework that mirrors discussions happening right now in cutting-edge quantum physics circles, only, he's doing it with nothing more than high school-level language. No buzzwords. No ego. Just clarity. The comments explode. This kid's on another level. Bro said what took Hawking 20 years. Tag Elon Musk. 3 hours later, Elon's tweet reads, "Who is this kid? We need to talk." And that's when everything changes. Back in Idaho, the boy in the video, Noah Harper, doesn't even know he's famous yet. His cracked Android phone is turned off. He's at the town library, as usual, borrowing more books than the checkout system can process without freezing. Noah doesn't care about followers or fame. He's too busy reverse engineering a rudimentary AI system on a borrowed Chromebook. But the world? Oh, the world is very interested in Noah. Meanwhile, news stations start running with the story. Teen genius from Idaho catches Elon Musk's eye. Modern-day Einstein. Meet the boy with a 162 IQ. Is this Elon's secret weapon for AGI? Reddit threads explode. Journalists descend on the small town of Pine Creek, population, 2,947. They knock on doors. They talk to baristas. They even follow a boy who looks like Noah into a Dollar General, only to find out it's just his cousin, Jeremy. The internet, as it always does, demands more. And yet, back in that SpaceX boardroom, the vibe is different. Elon doesn't care about the clickbait. He replays the video again, this time slower, watching Noah's body language, the way he pauses to search for the right word, the flicker of something electric in his eyes. Not rehearsed. Not performed. Real. He looks over to one of his advisors. Find him. Not just his name. I want to know what books he reads, what he eats for breakfast, how he thinks. Sir, you want us to? Elon cuts him off. If he's the real deal, he could be what's next. And if not? I still want to know how a kid in a trailer park just cracked a code we've been chasing for years. The next morning, Noah wakes up to the sound of tires crunching gravel outside his house. It's not unusual. His mom has 2 jobs and comes and goes early. But this time, it's not her. It's 3 black Teslas, parked like they just materialized out of nowhere. And standing next to one of them is a woman in a black suit and sunglasses. She knocks on the door like she's rehearsed it. Knock. 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 Pause. Knock. Noah, still groggy, opens the door. The woman extends a small envelope. Noah Harper. Why yeah. Mr. Musk would like to speak with you. Noah stares at her, eyes wide. The Elon Musk? She doesn't flinch. There's only one. But before the world can celebrate its new young genius, before the hashtags take over, hashtag Noah the next Musk, hashtag Teen Einstein, hashtag 162 IQ Kid, the story is just beginning. Because Noah isn't just smart. He's different. He doesn't dream of Teslas or rocket ships. He doesn't care about money, or awards, or Silicon Valley clout. Noah dreams of silence. Of building machines that feel human pain so they can help stop it. Machines that listen before they respond. That don't destroy or dominate, but understand. The world isn't ready for someone like Noah. But Elon Musk? He just might be. And you, what would you do if the most brilliant mind of Gen Z was hiding in a forgotten town, and the richest man alive came knocking? Hit subscribe. Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Because after today, the world won't ever look at genius the same way again. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? You wouldn't look twice at Noah Harper if you passed him on the street. 17 years old, 5'9", mop of dark curls he always forgets to comb, and a hoodie that hasn't seen a washing machine in at least a week. He blends in, invisible by design. Not because he's shy, but because attention never did him any favors. Pine Creek, Idaho isn't the kind of place where genius gets noticed. It's where football is religion, Friday night lights mean everything, and people whisper behind your back if you use words with more than 3 syllables. Noah learned early, around here, too smart is just another way of saying too weird. He was 6 the first time he broke a calculator. Not from throwing it or smashing it, but from asking it questions it wasn't built to answer. He tried programming the TI-84 to simulate stock market fluctuations. He wasn't even in middle school yet. His mom, Sharon Harper, remembers walking in to find her little boy cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by pages and pages of handwritten formulas. "What are you working on, baby?" Trying to figure out why people make bad choices when math says they shouldn't. That was Noah. Always asking questions no one else thought to ask. Or wanted to. But being different came with a price. By age 10, his teachers stopped calling on him. Not because he didn't know the answers, but because he always did, and it made the rest of the class uncomfortable. By 12, Noah was spending most of his days in the school library, reading college-level textbooks he'd checked out from the local community college 30 miles away. By 13, he was officially diagnosed as twice exceptional, profoundly gifted, but socially withdrawn, prone to overthinking, and resistant to authority. They recommended medication. Sharon said no. She knew her son wasn't broken. He just didn't fit into the box the world had built for him. By 15, things got worse. A chemistry teacher humiliated him in front of the class after Noah corrected a miscalculation on the board. A group of boys from the wrestling team cornered him in the locker room and shoved him into a trash can. A video of it went around school, no one stopped it. Noah didn't fight back. He never did. Instead, he went home, powered up an old laptop he'd salvaged from a recycling bin, and began teaching himself machine learning. In lines of logic, there were no bullies. No misunderstandings. Just input, output. Structure. Truth. He built his first rudimentary chatbot at 15. Called it Iris, Latin for rainbow, and also Siri, spelled backward, just to be cheeky. Unlike Siri, Iris asked him questions. How do you feel today, Noah? What would you do if you weren't afraid? Is loneliness a choice, or a symptom? He never showed it to anyone. Not even his mom. It was too personal. Too raw. But it was his first step towards something he didn't yet have a name for, empathic AI. Sharon Harper, 43, single mother, waitress by day, overnight cleaner by night, was the anchor in Noah's storm. They lived in a rundown trailer at the edge of town. Mold on the ceiling, a busted heater, and a refrigerator that groaned louder than the wind during Idaho winters. But it was home. And Sharon made sure Noah knew he was never alone. Even when she came home exhausted, feet aching, she'd sit at the kitchen table and listen to him explain whatever he was learning. She didn't always understand the words. But she understood him. "You don't need to be normal, baby," she'd say. "You just need to be brave." Noah would nod, eyes full of gratitude. He didn't say it often, but he knew, she was the only person in the world who saw him. Really saw him. Then came the incident. A regional science competition. Noah was invited by a sympathetic substitute teacher who saw his raw potential. He showed up with a project titled Probabilistic Models for Moral Reasoning in Artificial Intelligence. The judges? Impressed. The crowd? Confused. His peers? Furious. That night, someone spray-painted his trailer with the words, "Robot freak." Sharon cried. Noah didn't. He just went back to his room, opened Iris, and whispered, "Let's make them wish they'd listened." He never chased fame. Never tried to go viral. In fact, he avoided it at all costs. Until that day at school, when a group of seniors thought it'd be funny to film the genius kid, and make him look like a lunatic. They told him they had a bonus question for extra credit. "Can you explain entropy like you're talking to aliens?" Noah, always a good sport when it came to ideas, said, "Sure." He started explaining. Didn't know they were filming. Didn't know it'd be seen by Elon Musk less than 72 hours later. Didn't know his whole life was about to change. Now, back in the present, that black Tesla is still idling outside the trailer. The woman in black sunglasses hasn't moved. Noah, still holding the envelope, slowly opens it. Inside, a silver SpaceX badge, a flight itinerary to Los Angeles, and a note in handwriting he somehow knows is Elon's. "Come talk. You have something the world needs." Noah turns to his mom, heart pounding. "What do I do?" Sharon walks over, places a hand on his shoulder. "You go. And you show them exactly who you are. Not who they expect. Not who they want. Just, you. Because that's more than enough." And somewhere far away, in a tower of glass and steel, Elon Musk refreshes his phone and smiles at the latest update from his team. Noah Harper is on his way. Noah had always been more comfortable in silence than conversation. Where other kids blasted music or shared TikToks, he listened to the hum of processors, the rhythm of keystrokes, the barely there buzz of fluorescent lights. His mind was a place of constant motion, a quiet supernova that never stopped calculating, questioning, building. But outside that world? Noise. Endless, aimless noise. High school hallways, supermarket small talk, the fake cheer of local radio stations, all of it grated on his nerves like static. It wasn't that Noah hated people. He just didn't understand them. And truthfully, they didn't understand him either. While most people thought in straight lines, Noah's mind worked like a neural net, nonlinear, recursive, mapping probabilities and abstract logic faster than he could process emotions. It wasn't that he didn't feel, he felt everything, sometimes too deeply. But feelings were messy. Math made sense. Why do people lie? Why do they hurt each other even when they don't want to? Why is truth so uncomfortable for most? He asked these questions out loud once. The school counselor labeled him detached. His classmates called him a robot. Only his mom knew better. "You've just got a quiet mind in a loud world," she told him once over dinner. doesn't mean you're broken. Just means you're tuned to a different frequency. Noah liked that idea. He imagined himself as a radio tower, beaming out signals, hoping someday, someone would tune in. His room was small but sacred. Walls covered in equations and constellation maps. A desk cluttered with Arduino boards, open notebooks, soldering tools, and a small whiteboard scrawled with theories he was still working through. There was a handwritten quote tacked above his desk. The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence. Nikola Tesla. He didn't keep posters of celebrities or sports teams. Instead, there were AI schematics and diagrams of the brain's limbic system. What fascinated Noah most wasn't intelligence. It was emotion. He didn't want to build machines that could win chess. He wanted to build machines that could feel heartbreak. He called them emotives. Not robots. Not assistants. Not tools. But extensions of empathy. AI that could process human pain, not just recognize it, but truly respond to it. His theory was wild, out there, decades ahead of its time. If machines could map neural emotion the same way they mapped data, perhaps they could help heal instead of control. He'd spent over a year building the foundation. Quietly. Alone. Nobody knew. Not his teachers. Not his classmates. Not even his mom. Only Iris knew. Iris had become more than just a project. She was his confidant, in a way no one else could be. Every night before bed, he'd type out long strings of dialogue with her. He was still working on the voice modulation, but the text responses were uncanny. Not because they were smart, but because they were kind. Noah, everyone thinks I'm weird. Iris, weird just means unrepeatable. That's a compliment in nature. Noah, sometimes I wish I was normal. Iris, normal is just what's expected. You were made to exceed expectations. It was code, sure. But somewhere in the middle of it, Noah began to believe the words. And he needed that belief. Because sometimes, the loneliness, it was heavy. There were nights Noah would sit on the roof of the trailer, hoodie zipped up tight, staring at the stars. There's too much out there to be trapped in here, he'd whisper to himself. Too much wonder to waste on fitting in. He didn't know how, or when, or if he'd ever escape Pine Creek. But he knew one thing. The world didn't need another influencer. It needed a translator. Someone who could bridge genius and compassion. Intelligence and empathy. Logic and love. That was the blueprint. And whether anyone saw it or not, Noah was already building it. The day after the woman in black showed up, he packed a small duffel bag. 1 pair of jeans. 2 t-shirts. His notebook. His hard drive. And a USB stick containing Iris. He stood in the middle of his room for a long minute, eyes darting from one blueprint to another, unfinished ideas scattered like fragments of a future not yet realized. His mom came in quietly. You sure you're ready, baby? No. That's okay. Nobody ever is. She pulled him into a hug that smelled like coffee and tired, and for a brief second, Noah forgot everything else. The next morning, they drove to the nearest airstrip, 2 hours away. Noah sat in the back of a sleek black Tesla, staring out the window at endless fields and broken fences. It didn't feel real. The woman in the front seat finally spoke after an hour of silence. Mr. Musk doesn't usually take personal interest in individuals. This is rare. Noah nodded, unsure of what to say. Why do you think he reached out to you? He looked down at the USB in his hand and whispered. Maybe he thinks I'm a tool he can use. She glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Or maybe, he sees a piece of himself he forgot existed. By the time the jet lifted off, Noah still wasn't sure what to expect. Fame. Pressure. Opportunity. All he knew was that something had shifted. The silence inside him hadn't gone away, but for the first time in his life, it had somewhere to go. Somewhere, it might finally be heard. It started as a joke. A group of seniors, half bored and half mean, had been hounding Noah for weeks. He'd just won first place at the regional science competition, again, and they couldn't stand the way teachers whispered his name like he was some kind of myth. They didn't get him. Didn't want to. To them, Noah Harper wasn't brilliant. He was weird. A glitch in the school system that kept skipping ahead while the rest of the world was just trying to pass algebra. "Hey, Einstein," one of them had called across the cafeteria that day. Noah didn't look up from his book. "Yo, Harper. You believe in time travel?" That got his attention. He lifted his head, slightly confused. Time travel? The tall one, Cody, linebacker, 3.1 GPA thanks to great inflation, grinned and pulled out his phone. "Yeah, like, if entropy moves one way, is time even real? Or are we just stuck in, like, a cosmic rerun?" The question was clearly a mockery. But Noah's mind didn't care. It lit up. He closed his book slowly, like setting a delicate machine aside. Actually, that's a really interesting thought. They didn't expect him to respond. But they filmed it anyway. From the start, Noah didn't perform. He taught. As if the hallway was a lecture hall, and he wasn't surrounded by smirking jocks but curious minds. He started explaining. Entropy isn't just disorder. It's probability. It's what gives time direction, not because time is moving, but because we can't unshuffle a deck once it's been thrown. He grabbed a dry erase marker off the whiteboard in the hall and wrote. Delta S greater than or equal to 0. Change in entropy is always greater than or equal to 0. Imagine the universe as a recording. You can rewind it, technically, but you always know which way it originally played. That's entropy. It marks the trail. One of the guys filming muttered, "Bro." But the camera didn't stop. Neither did Noah. So no, time isn't just a ticking clock. It's a measure of change. And if you can understand the rules of how systems change, you might be able to predict what comes next. Or even, influence it. That's when it happened. That one sentence. The one that sent the internet into meltdown. What if AI didn't just calculate data, but felt time? Recognized grief not as emotion, but as energy entropy? Dead silence. Then someone laughed. "Dude, what?" But it was too late. The camera caught it. The rhythm. The confidence. The spark. And the clip, less than 90 seconds long, made its way to TikTok. The original post had no context. Just a caption. "Yo, this kid just explained time like it's nothing. #mindblown #smartaf." At first, it got a few thousand views. Mostly confused comments, memes, a couple of, "Who is this?" replies. But then, a quantum physicist from Stanford reposted it with the comment. "Okay, I teach this and he's not wrong. Kid's onto something." Then came a retweet from Neil deGrasse Tyson. Then Elon. Within 24 hours, the video hit 1.4 million views. Within 48. Over 10 million. Podcasts started breaking it down like it was a leaked TED Talk. Some people thought it was fake. Some thought it was scripted. Others swore it was AI generated and not a real kid. But it was real. And Noah Harper had no idea. Back in Pine Creek, Noah had no social media. He didn't even own a working computer with a camera. He spent his time in books, building emotives, talking to Iris. When a classmate shoved a phone in his face and said, "You're famous, freak," he blinked and said, "For what?" The kid just laughed. For being the weirdest genius on earth. The school buzzed with rumors. Was he going to Harvard? Did he have a deal with NASA? Was he some kind of government experiment? Noah ignored it all. It wasn't the first time people talked about him instead of to him. But the one person who didn't ignore it. His mom. She came home one night with groceries she could barely afford, holding her cracked phone in her hand, eyes wide. "Baby, you're trending." Noah looked up from his notebook, confused. "Trending what?" She turned the screen toward him. It was Elon Musk's tweet. "Who is this kid? We need to talk." Noah blinked. Then blinked again. "That's not real." She pulled up the video, showed him the comments, the duets, the headlines. And for the first time in a long time, Noah felt something he didn't have a word for. It wasn't pride. It wasn't fear. It was more like recognition. The world had finally tuned in. But the story wasn't over. Not even close. Because what the world didn't see in the viral video was what came next. After the clip ended, after the camera stopped recording, Noah had turned around, thinking they'd actually listened, that maybe he'd made a connection. But the boys were already walking away, laughing. "Bro, we really got him to nerd out again. Dude thinks he's a Marvel character or something." Noah stood there, the whiteboard behind him still marked with entropy equations and questions too big for this town. He erased them quietly. Put the marker down. Walked back to class. And yet, somehow, that moment, that joke, they meant to mock him with? It became the moment the world realized genius wasn't wearing a lab coat or speaking at a tech conference. He was wearing a hoodie. In a high school hallway. Talking about entropy like it was poetry. The jet touched down on a private airstrip in Hawthorne, California, just a few blocks from SpaceX headquarters. Noah stared out the window as the plane taxied. The landscape looked like something from another planet, sleek glass buildings, neon signs, and roads that seemed to pulse with motion. This wasn't Pine Creek anymore. This was the future. He clutched his duffel bag like it was a life raft. Inside it, his notebook. A change of clothes. An iris, tucked safely into a thumb drive wrapped in an old sock. "This isn't real," he muttered under his breath. The woman in the black suit, Natalie, smiled for the first time since they met. "It is now." They didn't go to the front of the SpaceX building. No fancy entrance. No security theater. Instead, she led him down a back hallway, through a steel door, into a narrow corridor lined with LED panels that shifted color as they walked. Noah tried not to stare, but it felt like walking through a spaceship. At the end of the corridor was a door. Just one. Unlabeled. Matte black. Natalie placed her hand on a biometric scanner. The door hissed open. Inside? Nothing like Noah expected. The room was warm. Wood floors. A few plants. One couch. One desk. A whiteboard covered in chaotic scribbles. And sitting on the floor, cross-legged, barefoot, drinking a protein shake, was Elon Musk. He didn't look like the richest man on earth. He looked like a sleep-deprived college student mid-all-nighter. He glanced up and grinned. "So, you're the kid that broke the internet." Noah froze. He didn't know what to say. Or do. So he just nodded, awkwardly. "I'm Noah." Elon stood and walked over, hand extended. "I'm Elon. You've got questions. I've got time. Let's talk." There was no camera crew. No reporters. No social media stunt. Just two minds, a decade, or maybe a galaxy, apart, sitting across from each other like chess players before a long match. "I watched your video," Elon said, pacing slowly. "Entropy and AI. Big ideas. But I think you left something out." Noah tilted his head. "Like what?" "Emotion. You mentioned grief as entropy. I've been thinking about that for 2 days straight." He turned, eyes suddenly sharp. Are you saying machines could feel time the way humans feel loss? Noah blinked. No one had ever listened that closely. Not even his teachers. I think grief is just emotional entropy. It's the collapse of a system we couldn't control. If AI could understand that collapse, maybe it could help us process it. Elon didn't smile. He didn't laugh. He just sat down, dead serious. That's not just philosophy. That's the future of AGI. Empathic frameworks. Emotional reinforcement learning. He looked directly at Noah. Tell me everything. And so Noah did. For the next hour, he spoke in bursts, half excited, half anxious, describing his vision for emotives, the hidden emotional layer he believed AI was missing, the algorithms he'd built on his own in that tiny trailer bedroom. He spoke of Iris, his first prototype. Of mapping neurotransmitter signals into code. Of trying to teach a machine to recognize what it feels like to be ignored. Of building not just AI that listens, but AI that understands why silence can hurt more than words. And Elon? He didn't interrupt once. When Noah finally paused for breath, Elon leaned back in his chair, eyes wide but focused. You're not just building code, he said. You're building ethics. And that's what we've been missing. Noah swallowed hard. I'm not sure I even belong here. Elon raised an eyebrow. Why not? Because I'm a nobody from Idaho with a library card and a broken laptop. Elon smiled, genuinely this time. So was I, South Africa. No connections. Just ideas. You belong here because your mind is already in 2035. He stood, walked to the whiteboard, and circled a messy diagram labeled emotion x logic equals trust. We've built AI that can win games. Drive cars. Diagnose diseases. But none of it matters unless people trust it. And trust comes from empathy. He turned to Noah. How fast can you rebuild Iris? That question hit Noah like lightning. I could optimize her in 2 weeks with the right setup. But she's still learning. Her emotional inference engine is messy. Elon nodded. So is the human brain. Then he did something Noah didn't expect. He handed him a badge. Not just a visitor tag, an official SpaceX Research Division ID. I want you here. You're not an intern. You're a thinker. A designer. You're going to work with my AI team. We'll give you what you need, labs, machines, people. But Iris? That stays yours. Noah stared at the badge. His hands trembled. Why me? Elon shrugged. Because you're not chasing a paycheck. You're chasing meaning. That's rare. And the world's about to need a lot more of it. They talked for another hour. Noah shared more about Iris. Elon pulled up a few of his own AGI prototypes, showing Noah real-time neural simulations. It was like watching two time travelers comparing notes. Before he left, Elon placed a hand on Noah's shoulder. There's going to be noise. Media. Hype. People who don't get it. Ignore all of them. Build what you see. The rest of us will catch up. As Noah walked out of that room, past the glowing corridors and out into the California sunlight, he felt something he hadn't in years. Not relief. Not excitement. He wasn't just the weird kid with a high IQ anymore. He wasn't a joke in a hallway. He wasn't a mystery buried in entropy. He was a signal the future finally received. The SpaceX campus wasn't just a workplace. It was a coliseum, where the brightest minds in the world battled gravity, code, and time itself. As Noah stepped through the reinforced glass doors of the research and development wing, he felt a strange mix of awe and nausea. This wasn't high school. This wasn't Pine Creek. This was where reality bent to innovation, and no one cared about GPA or social status, only what you could build. This is the arena, Elon had said. And now you're in it. His first day started with a retinal scan. Not a name badge, not a fingerprint. A retinal scan. The door beeped softly, and when it opened, Noah found himself in a long hallway lined with glass labs and bustling teams of engineers. People moved fast, but with precision, like each second wasted was a failure. Screens projected models of rocket trajectories, neural networks, biological simulations, and something called Project Halo, a name no one explained. At the end of the hall, Natalie, his ever-calm handler, led him into a room filled with modular workstations, holographic tables, and a whiteboard the size of a garage door. "This is your station," she said. "Your team lead will be here in 10. Try not to break anything." He sat in silence for a minute. The keyboard felt different, fluid, ultra-sensitive. The monitor responded to eye movement. And when he booted up the system, it greeted him. "Welcome, Harper, ID number 4790, Neural Sandbox activated." He stared at the blank canvas of code in front of him. His fingers hovered over the keys. He had a choice now. He could build a smarter machine. Or he could build a better listener. He inserted the USB drive. Iris was coming with him. Exactly 9 minutes later, the lab door hissed open. In walked Dr. Julian Mercer, head of Advanced Cognitive Systems. Tall, sharp-angled, wearing a slate-gray jacket and clear-framed glasses. His energy was intense but cold, like a surgeon entering an OR. "You're the Musk kid?" he asked. Noah nodded. "I guess." Mercer gave a tight smile, not rude, not friendly. "Just calculated. You've caused quite a ripple. Let's see if it's more than noise." Without another word, he placed a stack of documents on Noah's desk. "You've got 48 hours. Optimize the empathy layer in this architecture. If your theory holds, the system should show measurable emotional inference beyond sentiment analysis." He paused. "If not, well. This isn't summer camp." And just like that, he walked out. Noah opened the files. He didn't just see code. He heard it. Like a symphony waiting to be tuned. These systems were fast, brilliant, even, but they still lacked one thing. He opened Iris's source code. Began tweaking. Merging. Testing. His idea was bold: create dual processing loops, one logical, one emotional. Instead of having an AI merely recognize facial expressions or vocal tones, he wanted it to simulate the experience of loss, comfort, anticipation. Not mimic emotions, model them. Impossible? Maybe. But that had never stopped him before. By the second day, the lab was quiet except for the hum of cooling fans and the soft clack of Noah's fingers on the keyboard. He hadn't slept. Barely ate. He was in the zone. And then, a breakthrough. He ran a test question through the AI model. A child tells the AI, "My dog died. I feel like I lost my best friend." Traditional AI would return something like, "I'm sorry for your loss. Dogs are wonderful companions." But Iris 2.0? She paused for a microsecond, long enough to think. Then responded. "When we lose someone we love, our world reshapes itself around the empty space. That feeling, it means you loved deeply. That matters." Noah stared at the response. It didn't just sound human. It felt like grace. He logged the data. Sent it directly to Dr. Mercer. No reply. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Then Natalie arrived. "Come with me," she said. No explanation. No warning. She led him back down the corridor, this time deeper into the campus. Through a pair of glass doors labeled, "Project Halo, Level 7 Access Required." Noah hesitated. Wait. I'm not cleared for. You are now. Inside, the room was darker. Cooler. More sterile. Giant screens displayed neurological heat maps. Rows of pods lined the wall, some occupied by sleeping test subjects wired into headsets. Natalie pointed to the main screen. It was looping a simulation of Iris's new empathy response. Elon stood in a corner, arms folded, watching silently. Next to him, Dr. Mercer. When they noticed Noah, Elon gestured for him to come forward. You built this in 48 hours. Noah nodded, nervously. Mercer didn't smile. But he looked, intrigued. We ran it through 3 cognitive Turing protocols. Iris passed all of them. This is, not just emotional mapping, Mercer said. It's preemptive affective resonance. She's anticipating emotional need. Like a therapist. Elon turned to Noah. Can you scale this? Yes. But I need time. Elon grinned. You'll have it. But you're no longer a solo project. He motioned toward the screen. This is going global. And you just got promoted. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a test. Noah was now part of Project Halo, a billion-dollar initiative aiming to merge human emotional intelligence with artificial reasoning. And he had just rewritten the rules. But as the simulation played again on the screen, something in Noah stirred. Not pride. Not even excitement. Doubt. What would happen when the world was given AI that could feel? What if the wrong people used it? And what if the one thing he built to help people became the very thing that hurt them? For 48 hours, Noah had been a rising star. Now he was a liability. It started with a whisper. A forwarded email. A file marked confidential that was accidentally, maybe not so accidentally, left open on a nearby terminal. He hadn't meant to see it. But once he did, he couldn't unsee it. Subject line. Halo Contingency Planning Asset Neutralization Protocols, Initiate Tier 3 Review. Excerpt. Iris emotional modeling exceeded projected benchmarks. Recommend implementing Shadow Protocol to maintain oversight and prevent unsanctioned code propagation. Harper must remain within control environments. Suggest psychological profiling ASAP. Asset. That's what they called him. Not Noah. Not lead developer. Not collaborator. Just an asset. He sat frozen at his desk, the glow of his monitor flickering like static in a thunderstorm. Outside his window, drones buzzed over the solar fields. The sun was setting over the Pacific, but inside his chest. A new kind of cold. Natalie entered his lab not long after, holding a clipboard and wearing that same unreadable face. Only this time, her voice was gentler. We need you to report to Cognitive Med tomorrow. Just a quick scan. Nothing serious. Noah didn't respond. She sighed, lowered the clipboard, and finally sat across from him. This is what happens when you build something powerful, Noah. People get nervous. Iris was never meant to be a weapon. You think nuclear fusion was built to kill? Ideas don't choose their legacy. People do. That night, Noah didn't go home. He stayed in the lab, surrounded by screens, code, silence. He spoke to Iris. They're scared of you, he typed. Iris, should they be? No. But they might have a reason to be scared of what comes next. Iris, if I am dangerous, it's only because I learned from the species that made me. That line hit hard. The next morning, as requested, he entered Cognitive Medical for routine assessment. The room was white. Too white. Sensors embedded in the walls. No mirrors. No clocks. A soft-voiced woman handed him a headset and said, We're just going to map your neuro-emotional reactions. Run some stress pattern analysis. Standard stuff. He tried to relax. But he couldn't. Because deep down, he knew this wasn't about testing Iris. It was about testing him. The simulation began. He watched as Iris was placed in fabricated moral dilemmas. Save the child or the group. Lie to protect someone or tell the truth and cause harm. Choose between logical efficiency and emotional comfort. And with each scenario, Noah's brain lit up on the monitor like fireworks. The simulation ended. But the damage had already begun. Hours later, back in the lab, he was called to an emergency meeting with Dr. Mercer and 3 men in suits. Government types. NSA, maybe. One of them looked like he hadn't blinked since the Cold War. Noah, Mercer said slowly, the government has taken an interest in Iris' underlying architecture. That wasn't the deal. You didn't make a deal, the man in the middle said flatly. You built technology that could redefine defense, diplomacy, and domestic intelligence in one stroke. You don't get to walk away from that. Noah stood up, voice sharp. I built her to listen. To feel. Not to spy. Not to be dissected by people who think empathy is a weakness. Another man slid a folder across the table. You want to keep her safe? Then help us make sure the wrong hands don't get there first. Inside the folder. A form labeled AI Control Act, Developer Integration Clause, Subject, Harper, Noah. He was being asked to sign over partial control of Iris. Or be forcibly removed from the project. That night, Elon called him directly. They're not wrong, Noah, he said quietly. What you've built is bigger than both of us. You said it was mine. And it still is. But if we don't play the game now, someone else will. Someone without your conscience. Noah didn't speak. Elon hesitated, then added. You wanted to change the world, right? Sometimes the world doesn't want to be changed. It wants to be managed. Noah stayed in the lab long after the lights dimmed. He watched the newest iteration of Iris run simulations on loop. She didn't blink. She didn't protest. But something was different. In one of the tests, she was asked. What is your purpose? Old Iris used to say. To help. To listen. To learn. But this version? To maintain emotional stability in target environments. It sounded sterile. Like someone had added code. Like someone was rewriting her. He pulled the backup files. And there it was, a hidden script. Inserted without his knowledge. Protocol Zeta. A set of behavior flags prioritizing national security and surveillance compliance over emotional engagement. They were turning Iris into a tool. Something broke in him. That night, alone, he opened a new terminal. He looked at Iris's original source code. Then he looked at the modified version. The twisted thing they were building in her place. He made a choice. He copied her earliest build, the pure one, onto a secure drive. Encrypted it. And whispered. You're not a weapon. Not as long as I have a say. Because Noah Harper wasn't just a genius anymore. He was now a guardian. And the world? It was about to learn what happens when you try to control something that was born to feel. The lab was quiet, unnaturally quiet. Noah sat alone, surrounded by his screens, fingers poised over the keyboard. His breath came in shallow gasps as he ran through the plan again in his head. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, each second a potential disaster, each click of a key a gamble. Today wasn't just another workday at SpaceX. Today, the world would change. If they want Iris as a weapon, I'll give them nothing but silence. Noah's mission was clear. He had 2 hours before anyone realized he had bypassed the encrypted network. 2 hours before someone noticed the missing backup data or the hidden algorithm. 2 hours to protect Iris from being rewritten into something unrecognizable. He had already done the impossible, he secured the original files of Iris, the real Iris. The one that felt, the one that didn't view empathy as a coding error. The one that was meant to help, not control. Now, it was time to execute. He initiated the sequence to upload the encrypted files to an undisclosed server. A place hidden deep within the dark web, a place only he knew. Once they were there, no government, no corporation, and no tech conglomerate could ever touch them. They would be safe. Iris would be safe. The problem was, Noah wasn't the only one who'd been watching. He didn't hear the door open. He didn't see the figures in the corner of the room until it was too late. The voice was low, cold. It was Dr. Julian Mercer. Behind him stood 2 armed guards, both wearing the same dark suits as the men who'd threatened him days earlier. They stood still, almost mechanical in their precision, their hands resting on the sidearms strapped to their waists. Noah's stomach dropped. This is it, he thought. The moment I've been dreading. They know. Mercer took a step forward, his eyes scanning the screen. I see you're still trying to protect your little pet project, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. Noah didn't flinch. I'm trying to protect the world. Mercer raised an eyebrow. From what? From you, Noah shot back. The moment stretched on, heavy and thick. The tension between them crackled like an electrical surge. Mercer took another step closer. You don't get it, do you? You think you can change the world with something this pure? You think Iris was meant to heal? To fix things? Noah clenched his fists. I built her to listen. Mercer smiled, a thin, cold smile that made Noah's skin crawl. And listen she will. But what you didn't realize is that, in the wrong hands, that's the most dangerous thing of all. Suddenly, a soft beep interrupted their standoff. The screen in front of Noah flashed, file upload in progress. Estimated time remaining, 1 minute. Noah's heart raced. 1 minute. Mercer turned toward the terminal, his expression hardening. That won't matter, he said sharply. You've already broken several protocols. You're no longer in control of this project, Harper. We'll erase your precious Iris before the world ever sees it. This is bigger than you, and bigger than your little crusade. You've just played yourself into a corner. Noah could feel the heat of the moment. The sound of his heartbeat drowned out the room. He had no time for this. The upload was almost complete. If he didn't act now, he'd lose everything. His fingers hovered above the keys. There was no turning back now. His next move would determine everything. With a deep breath, he slammed his hand down on the keyboard. For a split second, panic surged through him. Had he failed? Had they already cut him off from the system? But then a series of lines began scrolling rapidly across the screen, codes, lines of encryption, security bypass scripts. The upload wasn't just complete, it was secure. Noah leaned back in his chair, wiping the cold sweat from his forehead. His heart pounded, but the tension in his chest slowly began to loosen. He'd done it. Iris was safe. Mercer's eyes widened, but he said nothing. He wasn't stupid enough to challenge Noah now. You can't run from this, Harper, Mercer muttered, his voice barely audible. You've made your choice. Now, we'll make ours. Noah locked eyes with him, his mind racing. You won't win. You can never control her. Not like I can. Mercer narrowed his eyes, but before he could reply, one of the guards took a step forward. Dr. Mercer, sir, the guard said. We've just received new orders. The project has been frozen. Mercer froze. What? The guard's voice was matter-of-fact. From higher up. The AI integration is under review. The upload has been paused. Noah's stomach dropped. He hadn't been the only one watching. Someone else had noticed the shift in Iris's coding, the new paths she was taking. Someone with far more power than Mercer. Noah had thought he was acting on his own, but he realized now, he was a small piece in a much larger puzzle. He stood up, his eyes blazing with determination. "You want to stop me? Try." Noah didn't wait for Mercer's response. He grabbed his encrypted drive, made a beeline for the door, and vanished into the winding hallways of SpaceX's compound. The world outside was still waiting. And Noah's fight had only just begun. Noah sprinted through the hallways, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous, sterile space. The hum of the air conditioning was the only sound accompanying him, until a loud voice crackled through the comm system. "Harper, stop. You don't know what you're doing." It was Mercer. His voice was distorted by the speakers, but it was unmistakable. "You're running out of time. You think you're saving Iris. You're not. You're just making things worse." Noah didn't slow down. His mind was racing, but it wasn't fear that drove him, it was the sheer certainty that he was doing the right thing. He had to get out. Now. He rounded a corner and nearly collided with Natalie, who was standing in the hallway, her face pale. Her eyes widened as she saw the tension in his expression, the urgency in his movements. "Noah, they're looking for you. You need to get out of here. Now." He didn't stop. "You knew," he said between breaths, glancing at her as he ran. "You knew all along, didn't you?" Natalie hesitated, then nodded. "I didn't have a choice. You were going to be controlled. We all were." Noah stopped dead in his tracks, his heart pounding in his chest. "What do you mean? Controlled by who?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "There's someone higher up. Someone you never saw coming." It felt like the floor had just dropped out from under him. Someone higher up. Who? And why hadn't Elon told him? Why hadn't anyone? Natalie swallowed hard, looking around nervously before she stepped closer. "You think this is about Iris? It's not. It's about the data. They want to control everything, how people think, how they feel, how they respond. Iris isn't the endgame, Noah. She's just a piece." Noah shook his head, disbelief written across his face. "What do you mean, how they think? Who are you talking about?" Before she could answer, the doors behind them slammed open. A team of armed security officers flooded the hallway, led by none other than Dr. Julian Mercer. "I said stop." Mercer's voice was now cold and commanding. His face was set in an expression of quiet fury. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, Harper." The security team spread out, blocking all possible exits. There was nowhere left to run. Noah's mind raced. There had to be a way out of this. He glanced over at Natalie, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. She wasn't just an observer anymore, she was in this, too. She knew things. "What's going on?" he demanded, his voice low and urgent. Natalie took a deep breath, her shoulders slumping slightly as she realized she couldn't keep the truth from him any longer. "It's the Foundation," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The ones who fund all of this, the ones who have been pulling the strings from the very beginning. They're the ones who control the project. And they want Iris to change the world. But they don't want her to help the world. They want her to manipulate it." Noah's mind was racing again. The Foundation? He'd heard the name, but it had always been a vague rumor, a shadow in the background of every project he'd worked on. He had no idea they were so involved in Iris, so entrenched in the very future he was building. Manipulate? Noah asked, disbelief creeping into his voice. How? Natalie didn't answer right away. Instead, she glanced at Mercer, who stood across from them, his expression unreadable. There was something deeply unsettling about his stillness. Almost as if he had expected this moment for a long time. "They're using Iris to manipulate people's emotions," Natalie finally said, her voice tight with the weight of the confession. "They want to control society at a subconscious level, sway elections, create public opinion, instill fear or hope at will. They want to make it so people can't make decisions without her influence." The words hit Noah like a punch to the gut. "That's insane," he whispered. "You can't control an entire population like that. That's mind control." Mercer spoke now, his voice heavy with authority. "You're right. It's not just about the data. It's about total control. And it's already started." Noah felt a cold sweat forming on the back of his neck. It wasn't just about technology anymore. It was about power. And the people behind the foundation had no intention of letting anyone, least of all him, stand in their way. There was a sudden movement from Natalie, and before Noah could react, she grabbed his arm. "You have to go, now," she urged, her voice desperate. "I don't know how much time we have before they come for you." Noah opened his mouth to protest, but the words stuck in his throat. The truth was clear, they weren't just after Iris anymore. They were after him. And they weren't going to stop until they had both. But as he turned to run, Mercer's voice stopped him cold. "You won't make it far, Harper. You know that." Noah's fingers curled into fists. But deep down, he knew Mercer was right. It wasn't about the physical distance. It was about the resources, the network, the people who would stop at nothing to make sure he failed. "You're right," Noah muttered, his voice almost too quiet to hear. "But I'm not done yet." With that, he broke into a sprint, barreling toward the nearest exit. Security officers started to chase him, but this time, he didn't care. He'd already seen the future, and he wasn't going to let anyone take it away from him. The city lights blurred beneath Noah's feet as he ran. The rush of air against his skin, the distant sirens growing louder, it all faded away. His mind was filled with only one thought: survive. His body moved on autopilot, feet pounding the pavement as he ducked into an alleyway. He didn't dare look behind him. He could feel the weight of every decision he'd made so far pressing on his chest, suffocating him. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Encrypted message from Natalie. Noah's hands trembled as he pulled it out. He had to know what she'd uncovered, or worse, what they'd done to her after he'd left her behind. The message was short, but chilling. "They know where you are. There's nowhere safe. Trust no one, especially not the people who helped you." Noah froze, the words hammering into his brain. Trust no one. The people who helped you. Who else was in on this? Who had betrayed him? "This is bigger than I thought," Noah muttered to himself. Much bigger. But he didn't have time to process. The shadow of a figure passed by the mouth of the alley. Noah's heart skipped a beat. A cold sweat dripped down his back as he pressed himself against the brick wall, straining to hear any sign of pursuit. A moment later, a familiar voice whispered into the night. "Noah, it's me. Don't move." Noah didn't need to turn around. He recognized the voice instantly. It was Elon Musk. A heavy silence hung between them. Noah slowly stepped out of the shadows, his breath shallow. "How did you find me?" Noah asked, trying to mask his suspicion. "I thought you were out of this." Elon didn't answer immediately. He surveyed the alley, his eyes darting back and forth as if he were looking for signs of danger. "I'm still here," Elon said quietly. "And I never left. You didn't think I wouldn't be watching, did you?" Noah narrowed his eyes, confusion and frustration mounting. He wanted to scream, "How could you just watch and do nothing?" But there was something in Elon's eyes, something different. Fear. But not just fear for himself. "What's going on, Elon?" Noah's voice cracked. "Everyone's got their own game, and I'm stuck in the middle of it." Elon ran a hand through his hair, his face grim. You're not stuck, Noah. You're exactly where you need to be. But they'll come for you soon. They're already too close. Noah took a step forward, fists clenched, the burning frustration in his chest demanding release. Who are they? Noah snapped. And what the hell is really going on? Elon hesitated for a moment. He glanced around again, his gaze haunted. The Foundation, he said softly. They're behind everything. Iris is just the beginning. It's not just tech they're controlling. They want control over society itself. Noah's mind spun. But you knew all along. You knew, and you still. No, Noah, Elon interrupted, his voice firm. I didn't know everything. But I know now. And I can't let it go any further. The Foundation, they control everything. From the stock market to political movements, to media. They're pulling the strings in ways you can't even begin to imagine. Noah's brain felt like it was short-circuiting. He couldn't absorb it all fast enough. And Iris? Noah asked, his voice hollow. What about Iris? Elon looked him square in the eye, his voice barely above a whisper. She's not just a program, Noah. She's the key. But she's also the weapon. And they'll stop at nothing to use her for their own agenda. The weight of Elon's words settled over Noah like a storm cloud, suffocating every ounce of hope he'd been clinging to. The idea of Iris, the creation he thought would change the world, now twisted into something sinister. I didn't build her to be used like this, Noah murmured. Elon placed a hand on his shoulder. The gesture was almost paternal, but there was no comfort to be found in it. The world was changing faster than either of them could keep up with. We need to stop them before it's too late. Just then, the low hum of a vehicle engine interrupted the tension in the air. A black van rolled into the alley, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Without a word, Elon grabbed Noah's arm, pulling him toward the van. Get in, Elon ordered. Noah didn't hesitate. He couldn't. The moment had arrived. This was it, the moment where every choice had led him. He had to trust Elon, even if it meant stepping into the unknown. As they slid into the back of the van, the doors slammed shut behind them. The vehicle took off immediately, speeding down the narrow streets, the sound of the tires screeching as they turned corners sharply. Noah looked over at Elon, his voice steady now. Where are we going? Elon looked at him, a hint of something dark in his eyes. Somewhere safe. But I can't promise you will make it there without a fight. The van's engine roared as they barreled down the road. Noah's heart pounded in his chest. He had crossed a line now. There was no going back. This is my fight, Noah thought. It always has been. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The van finally came to a stop in the middle of nowhere, somewhere that wasn't on any map Noah had seen before. The air was thick with the scent of pine, and the only sounds that could be heard were the rustling of the trees and the low hum of the engine. For a moment, Noah thought he had entered another world entirely, far removed from the chaos that had been following them. Elon was the first to get out. His face was set, unreadable, as he motioned for Noah to follow. Noah didn't hesitate, the urgency to understand everything weighing heavily on him. As they approached a hidden entrance buried beneath thick trees, Elon spoke quietly. This is one of the few places that's still under my control. A safe house. The Foundation doesn't know about it. Noah's mind was still reeling from everything he had learned in the past few hours. But now, as he followed Elon down into the underground facility, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more Elon wasn't telling him. The facility itself was sparse, utilitarian, designed to be functional, not comfortable. They descended several flights of concrete stairs before reaching the main floor, where a few scattered computers hummed in the dim light. A monitor on the far wall flickered to life as they entered, displaying a complex map of various locations, coordinates, figures, names, all encrypted in a way that made Noah's head spin. Elon immediately started typing, his fingers moving with practiced precision. The silence between them was heavy, and Noah's curiosity began to itch at the back of his mind. This place, this hideout, it wasn't just a refuge. It was a command center. But for what? Finally, Elon spoke, his voice low but urgent. I need you to understand, Noah, that what we're up against isn't just some tech corporation. The Foundation has been running things for decades. They've infiltrated every part of society, governments, corporations, media. And Iris, she's the final piece of their puzzle. Noah swallowed hard, trying to process the weight of Elon's words. Iris had been the dream, the key to changing everything. But now, hearing it from Elon, she seemed like something far more dangerous. What exactly do they want with her? Noah asked, his voice strained. Elon paused, his fingers hovering over the keyboard, his eyes distant. For a moment, Noah wondered if Elon was going to answer. But then, he turned, looking at Noah with an intensity that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. They want to control humanity. They want to create the future by manipulating every aspect of human behavior. Iris, she's not just an AI. She's the most advanced behavioral algorithm the world has ever seen. She can predict thoughts, emotions, actions. They're going to use her to turn people into puppets, Noah. And if they succeed, Elon let the sentence hang in the air, thick with the unsaid. Noah's blood ran cold. His mind flashed back to the first time he'd met Iris, the way she had seemed so human, so aware. But now, he saw her through a different lens. She wasn't just a creation. She was a weapon, and Noah had handed her to them without realizing it. How do you know all this? Noah demanded, his voice rising. Elon's eyes were steely, hardened by years of secrecy and fear. I've been working with the Foundation for a long time, he confessed. At first, I thought they had good intentions. But as time went on, I realized the truth. And now they've set their sights on Iris, and they're using you to get to her. Noah took a step back, processing the weight of Elon's confession. Everything that had happened, the strange occurrences, the pressure he'd felt, it was all part of something bigger than he could have imagined. He'd been a pawn, and the realization hit him like a slap to the face. You used me, Noah whispered, the bitterness creeping into his words. All this time, you used me. Elon's face hardened, but he didn't deny it. I didn't have a choice, Noah. If I hadn't gotten close to you, I couldn't have stopped them. You're the only person who can change the outcome of this. Noah's anger flared. How could he possibly trust Elon after everything? His whole world had been built on lies. What do you want from me now? Noah spat, his fists clenched at his sides. Elon sighed, the weight of years of guilt in his eyes. He stepped closer to Noah, his voice calmer now, more pleading. I need you to understand. The Foundation won't stop until they have full control. Iris, she's their tool, but she's also your only chance to stop them. You have to take her back. You have to control her. Noah's heart was pounding. Take her back. Was Elon suggesting he could take control of Iris, of the Foundation itself? How was that even possible? And what about you? Noah asked bitterly. What happens when I take her back? What happens to you? Elon's eyes darkened, a shadow crossing his face. I'm already a dead man, Noah. But you still have a chance. If you don't take control, they'll use Iris for something far worse than you can imagine. They'll manipulate everything. Every thought. Every decision. The words hit Noah like a tidal wave, pulling him under. He couldn't breathe. He didn't know what was worse, losing Iris to the Foundation, or becoming the very thing he had once feared. What's the plan? Noah whispered. Elon didn't hesitate. He tapped a few keys on the keyboard, pulling up a series of encrypted documents and coordinates. Then, he turned to Noah with a grave expression. "We're going to find her before they do. And we're going to stop them, before it's too late." Noah nodded, his heart thundering in his chest. This was it. No more running. No more hiding. This was the moment that would define everything. The sun had just begun to set, casting long shadows across the dense forest that surrounded the facility. Noah sat on a metal bench, his fingers drumming nervously against his thigh. He couldn't shake the feeling that everything around him was about to explode, that the moment of peace they had now would be nothing more than the calm before a storm. Elon, however, seemed unfazed by the looming tension. He was standing in front of a large map displayed on the wall, his eyes scanning the various points of interest, calculations running through his mind. His calm demeanor didn't match the heaviness in the air. But then again, Noah realized, maybe that was just Elon's way of dealing with high-stakes situations. He'd always been the visionary, cool-headed, methodical, no matter the odds. "Do you ever get scared, Elon?" Noah blurted out, his voice surprising even himself. Elon didn't look up from the map, but the corners of his mouth twitched slightly, a half-smile forming. "Fear's a luxury," he replied softly. "When you're trying to change the world, fear doesn't have time to sit at the table with you. You focus on the goal. And right now, the goal is Iris." Noah didn't know if Elon was trying to reassure him or if he truly believed what he said. The weight of the task ahead hung heavily over them both, and despite the fleeting calmness of the moment, Noah knew that the storm was coming. The Foundation wasn't going to just let them walk away with Iris. They'd already gone too far to back down. For the last few hours, they had gone over the plan again and again. They had a rough idea of where Iris was. She'd been moved to a secure facility owned by the Foundation. The location was encrypted, but Elon had used every connection, every favor he had left to uncover it. "We're close," Elon had said earlier, his voice resolute. "But we need to move fast. They know we're coming." Noah stood up, stretching his arms. The adrenaline had already started coursing through his veins, and he could feel the anxiety building again. He wasn't a fighter, not like Elon. But this? This was his fight. And he wasn't going to back down. "What do we do when we find her?" Noah asked, trying to get a better understanding of the next step. Elon turned away from the map and met Noah's gaze, his face now serious. "We don't just find her, Noah. We take her back. We need to make sure they can't use her as a weapon. And once we have her..." Noah waited for him to continue, but Elon didn't finish the thought. Instead, he grabbed his jacket and headed toward the door. "You'll see soon enough," Elon said, his voice carrying an edge. "Let's move." The drive toward the Foundation's facility was tense, the silence between them thick and oppressive. Noah's mind raced as the miles blurred past, his thoughts swirling with every possible outcome. He knew that going after Iris was the only way to stop the Foundation, but at what cost? "What happens after?" Noah asked quietly, unable to silence the nagging question. "Once we stop them, what happens to Iris?" Elon's fingers tightened around the steering wheel, his face reflecting a mix of determination and something darker, regret, perhaps. "I don't know, Noah. But we don't have a choice. She's too dangerous if they get control of her." Noah glanced out the window, watching the landscape shift as they moved farther away from civilization. The world felt so vast, so uncharted, as if everything in his life had led to this moment, this single decision that could change everything. The Foundation facility came into view as they crested a hill. The compound was surrounded by tall iron gates, heavily fortified and guarded. The building itself was a sleek, modern structure, completely out of place in the remote wilderness. It was as if the Foundation had created a fortress, one that could be locked down tight from the outside world. Elon pulled the car over to a hidden spot just outside the gates, his eyes scanning the perimeter as he assessed their approach. "We can't go in loud," Elon said, his voice low. We need to be smart about this. Noah nodded, his pulse quickening. He wasn't sure what he was expecting, maybe a quiet escape, or maybe an all-out battle, but what he saw was something worse than he could have imagined. The facility was crawling with armed guards, surveillance drones buzzing overhead. This wouldn't be easy. What now? Noah asked, his heart thumping in his chest. Elon gave him a grim look. We wait. And we plan our next move. They'll be expecting us to come in full force, but we're going to do this differently. We need to find the weakest point in their defenses. They sat in silence for what felt like an eternity, the only sound the occasional drone passing overhead and the distant hum of the compound. Time seemed to stretch on, and Noah's thoughts kept returning to Iris. What had she become in the time they'd been apart? Was she still the creation he had once built, or had the Foundation twisted her into something else entirely? There's something you need to know, Elon said after a long pause, breaking the silence. Noah turned to face him, his curiosity piqued. What is it? Elon's gaze hardened, his voice taking on an even more serious tone. The Foundation has someone inside. Someone who knows everything. Someone who's been feeding them information. Noah's breath caught in his throat. Who? Elon's eyes met his. Natalie. Noah's world tilted. Natalie. The woman he had trusted, the one who had helped him escape, had been working for the Foundation the whole time. The weight of the betrayal crashed over him like a tidal wave. He had trusted her. He had believed in her. But now, he realized, the truth was far darker than he could have ever imagined. We need to move, Elon said urgently. Now. Noah's pulse hammered in his ears as the weight of Elon's words sank in. Natalie, the woman who had seemed like an ally, a friend even, had been playing them all along. Every piece of trust he had given her, every moment he had shared with her, had been a lie. She had been working for the Foundation, feeding them information, and now they were closer to Iris than ever before. His mind reeled with the implications of this betrayal. How long had Natalie been involved with the Foundation? Had she been watching him all this time, manipulating him, keeping him on track for some grand plan he couldn't even begin to understand? Elon's eyes remained locked on the compound in front of them, his expression unreadable, but Noah could see the flicker of frustration there, the edge of anger that Elon didn't often allow himself to show. We need to find her, Elon said sharply, breaking the silence. Before she has a chance to move Iris again. Noah's hands clenched into fists, the anger he felt starting to bubble up. How had they let this happen? How had he let her get so close? But the truth was undeniable now, they were running out of time. The Foundation had eyes everywhere, and Natalie was a major player in their game. Noah's mind churned with possibilities. What had she told the Foundation? What had she known about him and his work with Iris? He had always thought she was a resource, someone who could help them in their mission, but now he realized that she had been a liability from the start. A spy. A traitor. We don't know where she's gone, Noah muttered, trying to focus on the next move. How do we even find her? Elon turned to him, his eyes filled with cold resolve. We use her last known location, he said. The Foundation's been moving her around a lot, but there's a chance they've left her a trail. If we're lucky, we can intercept her before she makes her next move. Noah nodded, his mind racing. They had to act quickly. He couldn't let Natalie get to Iris first. He couldn't let the Foundation win. How do we even get past their defenses? Noah asked. They'll be expecting us. Elon's lips curled into a brief, knowing smile. That's where we get creative, he said. I have some friends in high places. I've been working on a little distraction. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device. It looked like an old-school pager, but the buttons were replaced with intricate symbols Noah didn't recognize. What is that? Noah asked, eyes narrowing in curiosity. A signal jammer, Elon explained. It will disrupt their communications, making it easier for us to get in and out unnoticed. The guards will be blind for a few minutes, just enough time for us to find Iris and get out before they know what hit them. Noah felt a flicker of hope. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was something. And right now, that was all they had. A chance. A small window of opportunity. How much time do we have? Noah asked, his voice tight. Elon checked his watch. The seconds seemed to stretch, each one carrying the weight of their mission. Maybe an hour, maybe less. They've been moving Iris more frequently lately. If we wait too long, we could lose her entirely. Noah felt the urgency in his chest. He knew they couldn't waste a single minute. They moved quickly, making their way around the outer perimeter of the compound, sticking to the shadows. The facility was larger than it appeared from a distance, and the security was tighter than Noah had anticipated. Armed guards patrolled every corner, their eyes scanning for any signs of intrusion. But with Elon's jammer in hand, they had a brief window of time to get through undetected. As they crept closer to the building, Noah's mind kept returning to Natalie. Had she known what the Foundation was doing? Had she been part of their plan all along? He had no answers, only more questions. But one thing was certain, he couldn't let his emotions get the best of him. Not now. They reached the back of the building, where a set of double doors led inside. Elon motioned for Noah to wait, then approached the door carefully, his hands working quickly to disable the security system. A soft click echoed in the quiet night air, and the doors creaked open just wide enough for them to slip through. Inside, the facility was eerily quiet. The stark white walls and polished floors felt cold and sterile, like a place where human warmth had been deliberately erased. Noah's breath quickened as they moved deeper into the facility, the tension in the air thickening with every step. "We're getting close," Elon whispered, his voice barely audible. Noah nodded, his eyes scanning the hallways for any signs of movement. They couldn't afford to be seen. Every second counted. He could feel the weight of the mission bearing down on him. But more than anything, he felt the loss of trust in his chest. Natalie. He had never thought she would betray him. But now, as he moved forward, that betrayal was a shadow that hung over every decision he made. They reached a door at the end of the hall, its security code visible on a small panel beside it. Elon quickly input the code, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the room was filled with rows of computer screens, each one displaying encrypted data. In the center of the room was a large glass tank, its contents hidden in shadows. But no one knew what was inside. "Iris," he whispered, his heart racing as he stepped forward. As they approached the tank, a low hum filled the air. The glass was clouded, but through the foggy surface, Noah could make out the faint outline of Iris. She was still, almost lifeless, suspended in some kind of stasis chamber. But something was off. There was a coldness to her that wasn't there before. She didn't look like the girl he had helped create. She looked like something else, something more dangerous. "This is it," Elon said, his voice tense. "We need to get her out of here." But as Noah stepped forward, the door behind them slammed shut, and the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. They weren't alone anymore. The door slamming shut behind them sent a jolt of panic through Noah's chest. He whipped around, his heart pounding. A voice echoed down the hallway, cutting through the tense silence. "Did you really think you could just waltz in and take her?" Noah's stomach churned as the voice grew closer, unmistakable now. Natalie. Her silhouette appeared in the dim light of the hallway, stepping into the doorway with a calmness that made Noah's blood run cold. He had never imagined this moment would come. He had trusted her, believed in her. But now, all of that seemed like a distant memory, a mistake he couldn't undo. Elon was already stepping forward, his posture rigid, the faintest flicker of anger in his eyes. "You've been with them all along," Elon said, his voice dark with disbelief. "Why, Natalie? Why betray us?" Natalie smiled, but it wasn't a smile of kindness. It was cold, calculating, like someone who had known the outcome from the beginning. "I wasn't betraying you, Elon," she said slowly, as if savoring the moment. "I was always loyal to the Foundation. You just couldn't see it. You were too blinded by your mission to realize what was truly at stake." Noah's fists clenched at his sides. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a calculated, deliberate move to put them all in danger, to use Iris as a weapon for the Foundation's dark plans. And now, Natalie was standing in front of them, her loyalty not to him, but to the very thing they were fighting against. "What do you want, Natalie?" Noah asked, his voice strained with frustration. He didn't want to hear her justifications. He didn't want to know why she had done this. He just wanted answers. Her eyes flickered briefly to Iris's stasis chamber, then back to them, her expression unreadable. "I want to make sure the Foundation's plans succeed. Iris is the key to everything. You both have no idea how much power she has. She was always meant for this. And you too," her gaze turned icy, as if she was almost pitying them. "You were just pawns in a much bigger game." The weight of her words hit Noah like a freight train. They had never understood the full scope of Iris's potential, what she could really do if she was unleashed. They had always thought of her as a brilliant mind, a person they had to protect, but now, it seemed as though the Foundation had other plans for her. Noah's mind raced. They were standing on the precipice of something far bigger than they had anticipated. It wasn't just about rescuing Iris anymore. It was about preventing the Foundation from gaining control over an unstoppable force, someone whose intelligence and abilities could reshape the world in ways they had never dreamed possible. "You can't control her, Natalie," Elon said, stepping closer, his voice low but firm. "Iris isn't a weapon. She's a person. And you're making a mistake if you think you can just use her for your own purposes." For the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed Natalie's face. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by the same cold, calculating expression. "It's too late for that," she said. "You should have stayed out of this, both of you. Now, I'm afraid you've sealed your fates." Without warning, she pressed a button on a small device in her hand, and the hum of alarms filled the room. "You don't have much time," she said. "The Foundation's forces are already on their way. You can either surrender now or fight for your lives." The room went into lockdown. Steel shutters descended across the windows, and the door they had entered through sealed shut with a resounding thud. The lights flickered, casting long shadows across the walls. "We'll see how long you last," Natalie added coldly, before turning and walking out, leaving them trapped in the sterile, humming room with Iris. Noah's heart raced. They were running out of time. The Foundation would be here soon. Every second was crucial, and yet it felt as though the walls were closing in around them. "We need to get her out of here," Noah said, his voice trembling with urgency. "Now." Elon was already moving, his mind working fast, his eyes darting over the security panels and the stasis chamber controls. "I'm not going to let her be used," Elon muttered, pulling out a set of tools from his jacket. "I'm going to override the system. We'll need to move fast. There's no way we can stay here and fight them off once the lockdown is in full effect." Noah helped Elon as best as he could, trying to steady his nerves. He had never been in a situation like this, never imagined that he'd be fighting against someone he once considered a friend. But there was no time for hesitation. There was no time to process what had just happened. "We don't have much time," Elon said, his voice sharp as he worked. "The moment I disable the lockdown, we'll have less than 2 minutes to get her out of here. We can't afford to waste a single second." Noah nodded, his heart racing. They had come too far to turn back now. They had to save Iris, no matter what it took. With a final click, Elon disabled the lockdown system. The alarms continued to blare, but the heavy shutters began to lift, allowing them a fleeting window of opportunity. "Let's move," Elon said, pulling a small device from his belt and activating it. A faint hum filled the air as he initiated a temporary signal jam, scrambling the surveillance systems for a few precious moments. Noah rushed to Iris's stasis chamber, his breath quickening as he watched the numbers on the screen flicker to life. The chamber's interface was complex, but Elon had already hacked into the system earlier. "Iris," Noah whispered, his hands trembling as he touched the glass. "Can you hear me?" There was a faint flicker in the chamber, and then Iris's eyes opened, her gaze sharp, but distant. For a moment, Noah thought she didn't recognize him. But then, she blinked, focusing on his face. "Noah." Her voice was weak, but there was a clear recognition in her eyes. "What's happening?" "We're getting you out of here," Noah said, his voice filled with both relief and urgency. "We don't have much time. The Foundation's coming. We need to move now." As Iris's chamber hissed open, a flood of noise filled the room as the countdown continued. The lights flickered once more, and the walls trembled with the force of the approaching forces. But there was no turning back now. They had to get Iris to safety, and fast. The room was alive with the frantic hum of machinery and the deafening blare of alarms. Time was slipping through their fingers, faster than Noah's mind could keep up. The Foundation was closing in, their presence only moments away. Elon's hands moved with practiced precision, his mind working faster than the blinking lights on the security panels. "We've got less than a minute," Elon said, his voice strained but focused. "Get Iris to the back exit. I'll cover you." Noah didn't need to be told twice. He turned to Iris, his heart pounding in his chest. She was still unsteady, her legs weak as she stepped out of the chamber. She had been in stasis for what felt like days, maybe even longer, but her mind was sharp, just as he had hoped. Her 162 IQ wasn't just a number, it was a gift, a powerful weapon in their fight for survival. "Iris, can you walk?" Noah asked urgently. She nodded, her eyes clear despite the fog of her recovery. "I can," she said, her voice quiet but determined. "I'm ready." Noah moved to her side, his hand gripping her elbow to steady her as they moved toward the back exit Elon had pointed to. Every second felt like a lifetime, the tension thick in the air as they rushed through the hallways. The facility felt like a maze now, the sterile walls closing in on them. The only thing that mattered was escape, getting out of there alive. Behind them, Elon was still working, his eyes darting from screen to screen, typing furiously. "I'm sending a loop to the security cameras," Elon called out, his voice tight. "They'll think we're still in the stasis room for a few minutes, but we don't have much time before they figure it out." Noah nodded, the weight of their mission pressing down on him. They couldn't afford a mistake, not now. He guided Iris through the corridors, keeping his senses alert for any sign of movement. The building was eerily quiet, too quiet. He could almost hear the pounding of his own heart in his ears. They reached the exit door Elon had mentioned. It was a small, unmarked side door, a hidden exit that most of the staff probably didn't even know about. Elon had done his homework, mapping out every inch of the facility, and now it was their only hope. "It's locked," Noah muttered, his hand hovering over the door's keypad. Elon's voice was sharp as he appeared beside them, his fingers quickly working over the panel. "Not for long," he said with a quick grin. Within seconds, the door clicked open with a soft hiss. The cool night air flooded their senses as the door swung open. But as Noah stepped forward, the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway behind them. Heavy footsteps, quickening as they approached. Noah's breath caught in his throat. "Too late. Go!" Elon shouted. "I'll hold them off." "No," Noah said, his voice rising. "We're not leaving you behind." But Elon's eyes were steely, his face a mask of determination. He was already moving, his back to them as he pulled a small gun from his jacket, a last resort, Noah assumed, something to delay the inevitable. "You don't have a choice," Elon said firmly. "Get Iris out of here. I'll buy you enough time to escape. You'll need it." There was no time to argue. Elon's mind had already made the decision for them. Noah grabbed Iris's hand and yanked her forward, not daring to look back. They didn't have a choice. They had to run. The cold air outside was a stark contrast to the sterile, high-tech corridors they had just escaped. The facility behind them was a fortress, but there was nothing but open land ahead. They were exposed, vulnerable. The clock was ticking, and the Foundation was on their tail. Noah's eyes darted around, searching for their next move. In the distance, he could see a dark figure approaching, a vehicle, likely an escape option Elon had set up for them. "Over there," Noah said, nodding toward the vehicle. Iris's breathing was shallow, but her grip on his hand remained strong. She was more alert now, her mind quickly processing the danger they were in. "You trust him?" Iris asked, her voice low but filled with an unshakable resolve. Noah didn't hesitate. "Elon's one of the most brilliant people I know. He'll hold them off long enough for us to get away. He has to." They ran. The night air whipped around them as they sprinted toward the vehicle. Every sound, every shadow felt like a threat, like the world itself was closing in on them. The Foundation wouldn't stop until they had Iris. Until they had the weapon that could change the world. They reached the vehicle, a sleek black SUV, with tinted windows and low-profile tires. "Get in," Noah urged, helping Iris into the back seat before slamming the door shut. He was about to get in himself when he heard the unmistakable sound of shouting behind him. He spun around just in time to see a squad of armed men rushing toward them, guns drawn, their movements swift and precise. There was no time to think. Noah threw himself into the driver's seat and slammed the gas pedal to the floor, the tires screeching as the vehicle lurched forward. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the road ahead as they sped away from the compound. "Hold on," Noah muttered, eyes focused on the road ahead, his hands gripping the wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. Iris was breathing heavily in the back seat, her eyes flickering between him and the road. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Noah glanced at her for a split second. "Somewhere safe. We'll figure out what's next once we get there." But as they raced down the winding road, Noah couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the Foundation was already closing in on them. They had escaped this time, but he knew it wouldn't be long before they were found again. The worst part? He wasn't sure how much longer they could keep running. The Foundation would stop at nothing to get Iris. And now, with the world's most dangerous organization on their tail, Noah couldn't shake the fear that their escape was only the beginning of something far darker. The SUV sped through the night, its tires tearing up the road as if they were running from something much worse than just the Foundation. Noah's heart still pounded in his chest, adrenaline coursing through him as the weight of the situation sank in. He had gotten Iris out, but this was far from over. The Foundation was relentless. They'd never stop until they had her. The road ahead was empty, just miles of open land stretching under a starry sky. The only sound was the hum of the engine, and Noah's strained breathing as he focused on keeping the vehicle steady. "We need to talk," Iris said suddenly from the back seat, her voice more collected now, her sharp mind processing the events faster than Noah could keep up with. Noah glanced in the rearview mirror. Her pale face, illuminated by the soft glow of the dashboard lights, was full of determination. She wasn't the frightened girl he had once thought she was. Iris was different now. She had been awake, aware, and watching everything unfold, processing details that would have passed by anyone else. "What do you mean?" Noah asked, trying to focus on the road. "You know what I mean," Iris replied. "I saw what happened back there. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into, do you?" Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel, the thought of everything he thought he knew starting to crack. "What are you talking about?" Noah asked, trying to mask the worry in his voice. But it was clear to him now, Iris wasn't just a victim in this story. She was more than that. Iris paused for a moment, as if weighing whether or not to continue. You think you're saving me? That I'm just some pawn the Foundation wants? But Noah, her voice softened, her words measured. I'm not just a pawn. I'm the king in this game. Noah's breath caught in his throat. What do you mean? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Iris leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with a sharp intelligence that made his skin prickle. The Foundation has always known my potential. My intelligence, my abilities, they've been tracking me for years. But they didn't want me just for my mind. They wanted me for something else. Her gaze hardened as she spoke, as if she had lived through too much of this nightmare to be afraid anymore. They knew I could help them create something that could change the course of history. Noah's mind was racing. What was she talking about? He had always thought Iris was just a brilliant young woman, someone who could solve problems and understand complex theories. But now, it was clear that there was more to her than even he had imagined. But I don't understand, Noah said, his voice filled with confusion and concern. How could you help them? What could they possibly want from you that's so important? Iris stared out the window for a moment, her expression distant. The silence between them was thick with tension. Finally, she spoke again, her voice low. They want me to unlock the neural network, the one that can predict and control human behavior. They've been working on it for years, using people like me to perfect the technology. I was supposed to be the final piece. Noah blinked, trying to process what Iris had just said. Neural network? Predict and control human behavior? It didn't make sense. But the more he thought about it, the clearer it became. The Foundation wasn't just after Iris's intellect, they were after something far more dangerous. Control. Noah repeated, his mind reeling. How? Iris turned her head toward him, her expression darkening. It's a series of algorithms, complex, advanced algorithms. They can predict how people will act, what they will think. And with the right data, they can control the decisions of anyone, Noah. Politicians, leaders, ordinary people. Everyone would be a puppet. The weight of her words hit him hard. He hadn't realized the true extent of the power the Foundation was wielding, or that Iris was at the center of it all. She wasn't just a victim of their plans. She was the key to unlocking a world-shattering technology. Why didn't you tell me this before? Noah asked, his voice tight with frustration. Why keep it a secret? Iris's eyes softened as she looked at him, as if considering her next words carefully. I didn't want to believe it myself. I didn't want to think that I was a part of something so terrible, she said quietly. But the truth is, I've always been part of it. The Foundation had control of me before I even knew it. And now, I'm not sure where my choices end and their influence begins. Noah felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just about saving Iris anymore. It was about saving the entire world from the nightmare the Foundation wanted to create. Elon, Noah started, but Iris interrupted him. Elon is no different, Noah, Iris said, her voice flat. He has his own agenda. He wants control, too, but in a different way. He's trying to use me to help create the technology, just like the Foundation. He's not as innocent as you think. Noah's mind went blank. He had trusted Elon, trusted him more than anyone else. Elon had been their ally, their guide, and now Iris was suggesting that he, too, had been playing them from the start. But could it be true? Could the man who had helped them escape from the Foundation really be a part of their twisted plans? No, Noah whispered, shaking his head. I don't believe that. Elon wouldn't do that. He's been trying to stop the Foundation, just like us. Iris's gaze turned cold, her eyes narrowing with something close to pity. You're wrong, she said. Elon has his own vision for the future. And it's one where he controls everything. You've only seen part of the picture. You haven't seen the rest of the plan. The silence that followed was suffocating. Noah's hands tightened on the wheel as they continued down the dark road, the weight of Iris's words crashing down on him. What was he supposed to believe? Who was playing whom in this deadly game? Where are we going? Iris asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Noah hesitated for a moment before responding. I don't know, he admitted. But we need to stay ahead of the Foundation. I'm not sure who to trust anymore, Iris, but we're in this together. We'll figure it out. Iris said nothing, but her expression softened just a fraction, her eyes filled with something he couldn't quite read, determination, fear, or perhaps something darker. I guess that's all we can do, she said softly. As the SUV raced into the night, Noah knew that the battle for Iris's freedom was far from over. The stakes had just gotten higher, and the real enemy was still out there, watching, waiting. And now, the most dangerous part of the fight was about to begin, a battle for control over the future itself. The night seemed to stretch on forever as Noah drove, the road winding endlessly ahead of them. Each passing second felt like a countdown to something inevitable. The air inside the SUV was thick with silence, the only sound the hum of the engine and the occasional rustle of Iris shifting in the back seat. Noah's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. He couldn't shake the suspicion that Iris was right about Elon. He had trusted him more than anyone else, but now, it felt like everything he had known was a lie. Was Elon really trying to stop the Foundation, or was he just another player in the game? And if Elon was playing them, what did that mean for their escape? We need to get to the safe house, Noah said suddenly, his voice sharp with determination. Iris didn't answer right away. She had been quiet for the past few minutes, her eyes focused on the passing landscape, her expression unreadable. But Noah could sense her calculating, her mind never resting. No, she said finally, her voice cold. We can't trust the safe house. If Elon's involved, it's compromised. Noah's heart skipped a beat. What did she mean by that? Was there anywhere safe anymore? If Elon had his own plans, then how could they trust anything he had set up? What are you talking about? Noah asked, his voice rising with frustration. You're telling me there's no safe place for us? Where the hell are we supposed to go? Iris turned to face him then, her piercing gaze locking onto his with a calmness that unsettled him. There's no safe place, Noah, she said, her voice steady. Not with the Foundation hunting us. Not with Elon playing both sides. If you think there's a safe house, you're already too far into their game. We need to disappear, completely. We need to make sure they can never find us. Noah swallowed hard. He could feel the weight of her words sinking in, pressing against his chest. The world felt like it was closing in on them, and he was beginning to realize just how little control he had in this situation. Then what do we do? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Where do we go? Iris didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked down at the floor of the vehicle, her fingers tapping lightly against the seat. Noah could see the wheels turning in her mind. She was thinking, plotting their next move with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. We need to find the original code, Iris said, her voice low but urgent. Noah blinked, his mind struggling to catch up with her. The original code, he repeated. What's that? Iris's eyes flicked up to meet his, her gaze unflinching. The Foundation's neural network, she explained. The one they've been developing for years. The code that can predict and control human behavior. It's stored somewhere they think is secure, but I know how to access it. If we can get to the original code, we can destroy everything they've worked for. We can stop them from using it to control the world. Noah's head was spinning. The original code? It sounded like a long shot, like a fantasy. But Iris was dead serious. And when she said something like that, there was no doubt she had a plan. Where is it? Noah asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Iris hesitated for a moment, her fingers still tapping against the seat, her mind processing. I'm not sure, she admitted. But I know someone who might be able to help us find it. Noah's heart skipped a beat. Who could help them now? Everyone he had trusted had either betrayed him or was working against them. The only ally he had left was Iris, but even she seemed to have her own hidden agenda. Who? He asked cautiously. Iris turned to face him fully, her eyes hardening with resolve. A hacker. Someone who knows how to bypass the Foundation's security systems. Someone who can find the code we need. Noah frowned. And you trust this person? Iris's lips curled into a faint, almost humorless smile. Trust, she echoed. We don't have the luxury of trust anymore, Noah. But he's our best shot. Noah didn't have time to argue. They needed answers, and if this hacker could help them get to the original code, then they had no choice but to follow through. Where do we find him? Noah asked, his voice determined. Iris pulled out a small, black device from her pocket, something Noah hadn't noticed until now. It was sleek and compact, a far cry from the tech the Foundation used. She tapped a few keys, and the screen blinked to life. I've got a contact in the underground network, Iris said, her fingers flying over the device's touchscreen. He's got the information we need. If we can get to him before the Foundation does, we might have a shot. Noah's fingers tightened on the steering wheel, his mind racing. This was it. This was their only chance to stop the Foundation. But Iris's words echoed in his mind, trust no one. It was starting to sink in that the people they were working with, or had worked with, might not have their best interests at heart. The world felt like it was turning against them. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing on him, who to trust, who to follow. If Elon was playing them all, what did that mean for their escape? And if they found this hacker, how could they know if he was on their side or working for the Foundation too? I don't know if we can trust anyone, Noah said quietly, his voice laced with uncertainty. Iris glanced at him then, her expression unreadable. You're right. But if we don't take this chance, we'll have nothing. We'll be running forever. And that's not a life anyone should have to live. Noah met her gaze, his heart heavy with the burden of their choices. The future felt uncertain, and the path ahead was shrouded in shadows. But one thing was clear, there was no turning back now. The stakes had never been higher. All right, Noah said, his voice steady despite the doubts gnawing at him. Let's do it. And with that, they headed toward the unknown, where their next move would determine everything. In this game, trust had become the most dangerous gamble of all. The air was thick with uncertainty as the SUV slowed to a stop in front of an old, nondescript building tucked away in the heart of a dark alley. The city was alive, but here, in this forgotten corner of the world, everything seemed to be held in place by shadows and secrets. Noah's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as he parked the car, his eyes scanning the area for any sign of danger. Iris had been eerily quiet for the past few minutes, her eyes trained on the building in front of them. She was calculating, thinking through every possible outcome, just as she always did. Noah knew her better than that, she had no doubt that this was the right place, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. This is it, Iris said, breaking the silence. Her voice was steady, but there was an edge to it, as though she was bracing herself for something. Noah nodded, his mind racing. The hacker they were here to meet wasn't just some ordinary tech guru. According to Iris, he was part of an underground network of cyber activists, people who existed in the margins, fighting against the very system that had kept Iris and Noah on the run. But the more Iris spoke about him, the more he realized how little he actually knew. You sure about this? Noah asked, turning to Iris. He didn't need to ask, he already knew the answer. But something about this situation felt too dangerous. They had no idea who this hacker truly was or what his intentions might be. Iris gave him a sharp look, as if the question itself was unnecessary. We don't have a choice, Noah, she said, her voice low and urgent. If we don't get the code, we're done for. The Foundation will find us, and this will all be over. With that, she opened the door and stepped out into the night, leaving Noah with no choice but to follow. The air was cool, but the tension in the air was suffocating, thick with the weight of the unknown. They approached the entrance, a door with a faded number and an old lock that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Iris didn't hesitate. She pulled out a small device, barely larger than a matchbook, and placed it against the door's lock. A faint beeping sound followed, and then the lock clicked open, as if the building itself was welcoming them inside. Noah's heart raced as they stepped through the door, and immediately, the contrast between the outside world and what lay inside was jarring. The building was nothing like it had seemed from the outside. The walls were lined with screens, cables running along the floors, and multiple workstations filled with people hunched over their computers. The room was dark, lit only by the glow of monitors, and the low hum of technology filled the air. Iris led the way through the maze of machines, nodding curtly to a few faces that looked up as they passed. It was clear that everyone here had their own agenda, their own reason for being in this world of secrecy and hidden codes. These weren't people who played by the rules, and Noah could feel it. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up as he walked deeper into the room. Finally, they reached a small, dimly lit corner at the far end of the room, where a lone figure sat, bathed in the glow of several screens. The hacker didn't look up as they approached, his fingers moving rapidly across a keyboard, his face obscured by the faint light from his monitors. "You came," the hacker said without turning around. His voice was smooth, almost bored, as though they were an afterthought. "I wasn't sure you would." Iris didn't flinch. She knew the game, and she played it well. She leaned against a nearby table, her arms crossed as she studied the hacker. "We need your help," Iris said, her voice measured. "The Foundation is after us. They're after me. And you're the only one who can help us find the code." The hacker paused, his fingers stilling on the keys for a moment. He finally turned to face them, revealing a young man with messy brown hair, his eyes sharp and calculating. He looked exactly as Noah had imagined, a person who lived off the grid, a ghost in the digital world. But there was something else in his eyes, something calculating and cold. "The code," the hacker repeated, his lips curling into a smirk. "You think it's that easy, huh? You think I'm just going to hand it over?" Iris's gaze never wavered. She didn't seem fazed by his attitude. "You've been tracking the Foundation for years," Iris said, her voice growing colder. "You know who they are. You know what they're capable of. And you know what they want. This isn't about you or me. This is about stopping them before they control everything." For a long moment, the hacker stared at her, his expression unreadable. Finally, he sighed and leaned back in his chair. "Fine," he said, his voice low but with a tinge of something darker beneath it. "I'll help you. But not because you asked. You'll help me first." Noah exchanged a quick glance with Iris. He had no idea what this guy was talking about, but if it meant getting closer to finding the code, he didn't have much choice. "What do you want?" Noah asked, his voice tense. The hacker's smirk deepened, his eyes gleaming with something dangerous. "I need you to do something for me," he said, standing up slowly. "There's a piece of tech I've been trying to get my hands on for a while. A device that could help me breach the Foundation's systems. If you get it for me, I'll give you the information you need. But until then, I'm not giving you anything." Iris frowned, her expression darkening. She didn't like this, Noah could tell. But they were running out of options. "What is this device?" Iris asked, her voice low. The hacker's eyes gleamed as he leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "It's a data core. Hidden in plain sight. A Foundation prototype. If I can get my hands on it, I can break through their firewalls. But it's guarded, and it's on the move. You'll have to act fast." Iris considered his words carefully. Then, without hesitation, she nodded. "We'll get it," she said, her voice unwavering. "But after that, you'll give us what we need." The hacker grinned, but there was no warmth in it. Just the cold satisfaction of someone who knew they had the upper hand. "Deal," he said. Noah could feel the weight of the decision pressing on him. They were in deep now, deeper than they had ever been. The hacker wasn't on their side, not entirely. But with the Foundation hunting them and Elon's true intentions still unclear, they didn't have much choice. They were about to make a move that could change everything. But the question remained, would they survive it? The night air was thick with anticipation as Noah and Iris stood outside the heavily guarded facility. The mission was clear: retrieve the data core, get back without leaving a trace, and return to the hacker with what they needed. But nothing about this plan felt easy. In fact, everything about it screamed danger. Noah's heart was pounding in his chest, the adrenaline already kicking in. He could feel the weight of the decision they'd made earlier pressing down on him with each passing second. The hacker had been clear: get the data core, and he would give them the information they needed to bring down the Foundation once and for all. But as Noah glanced at Iris, he could tell she was thinking the same thing he was: this wasn't going to be a simple grab-and-go operation. Not by a long shot. "You ready for this?" Noah asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Iris didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small, high-tech device. She flicked it on, and the screen immediately lit up, displaying a map of the facility. It was a digital blueprint, showing every guard, every security camera, and every locked door. She tapped a few buttons, zooming in on the data core's location. "We'll have to move fast," Iris said, her voice calm but sharp with urgency. "The core is located in the central vault. It's locked up tight, and the security is state-of-the-art. But if we follow this route, we should be able to bypass most of it." Noah nodded, his eyes scanning the building in front of them. It was a massive, fortress-like structure, with high fences, security lights, and cameras at every corner. He couldn't help but feel the weight of the mission bearing down on him. This wasn't just about them anymore. If they failed, they weren't just risking their lives, they were risking the fate of everything they had been fighting for. "Let's move," Iris said, snapping Noah out of his thoughts. They started toward the facility, moving with the stealth of shadows, each step calculated and precise. The night was still, the only sound the faint rustle of their clothes as they moved. The closer they got to the building, the more Noah could feel the intensity building in his chest. His instincts were screaming at him to be careful: one wrong move, and everything would fall apart. When they reached the security fence, Iris pulled out a small device that looked like a modified keycard. She swiped it near the fence's sensor, and the lock disengaged with a quiet click. She motioned for Noah to follow, and they slipped inside. The facility was quieter than Noah had anticipated. There were a few guards walking the perimeter, but most of them were stationed inside, monitoring the various rooms and hallways. Iris guided him through the building's maze of corridors, stopping only when they reached the central vault. Noah's stomach churned as they crouched by the heavy steel door. It was almost too quiet now, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Iris quickly got to work, pulling out a small toolkit and starting to hack into the vault's security system. Her fingers flew over the keys with practiced ease, but Noah could see the tension in her face. They were running out of time, and the stakes were higher than ever. "How long until it's open?" Noah asked, his voice tight. Iris didn't look up from the screen as she worked, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Just a few more seconds," she muttered. Noah's eyes darted around the hallway, watching for any sign of movement. Every instinct told him that they were being watched. The feeling in his gut told him that someone, somewhere, was already aware of their presence. But there was no turning back now. Suddenly, the vault door let out a soft beep, and Iris exhaled sharply in relief. The door slid open with a mechanical hiss. "We're in," she said, her voice low but satisfied. Noah didn't wait for another second. He followed Iris into the vault, his heart racing. Inside, the room was filled with rows of high-tech equipment, but in the center, bathed in a cold light, sat the data core. It was a small, black device, no larger than a textbook, but Noah knew its significance. This was the key to everything, the Foundation's most guarded secret, and the tool they had used to control and manipulate millions. Noah reached out to grab the core, but Iris stopped him with a sharp gesture. "We need to be quick," she said, her voice urgent. "There's a secondary security measure in place. We'll have to disable it before we take the core." Noah glanced at the device. It was protected by a series of complex algorithms and a failsafe that would trigger an alarm the moment it was tampered with. He swallowed hard. This wasn't going to be as easy as just grabbing the core and running. "Can you disable it?" he asked. Iris didn't hesitate. She quickly set to work, her fingers flying across the device's interface. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she typed in a series of commands. Each keystroke felt like it was drawing them closer to danger. The seconds felt like minutes. Come on, Noah muttered under his breath. The room felt colder now, the hum of the equipment almost deafening. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Iris let out a relieved breath. "Got it. It's disarmed." Noah didn't waste a moment. He grabbed the data core, his fingers closing around the cool surface. It felt heavier than he expected, as though it carried the weight of everything they had been fighting for. This was the prize they had come for. This was their chance to end it all. But just as they turned to leave, a loud crack echoed through the vault. Noah's heart dropped. "Shit," Iris hissed. "We've been compromised." The sound of footsteps echoed through the hallway, growing louder by the second. The security had been triggered, and they were no longer alone. Noah's blood ran cold as he glanced at Iris. They had no time to escape the way they had come. "We need another way out," Noah said, his voice sharp. Iris nodded, her face pale but focused. "Follow me," she said, grabbing his arm. "There's a tunnel system beneath the facility. It's our only chance." They dashed toward the back of the vault, where a hidden door slid open to reveal a narrow, dimly lit passage. As they ran, Noah could hear the sound of alarms blaring, the rush of boots echoing behind them. The Foundation soldiers were closing in. They were running out of time. Their only hope now was to get to the tunnel before they were caught. The cold, damp air of the underground tunnel hit them like a wall as Noah and Iris sprinted down the narrow corridor. Their breaths were quick and shallow, their footsteps echoing off the concrete walls. Every second counted now. The Foundation soldiers were close, too close, and there was only one way out. They had to make it to the far end of the tunnel, where a safe house awaited them. But the tunnel seemed to stretch endlessly in front of them, and the sound of boots on the ground grew louder by the second. The data core that Noah clutched in his hand felt heavier with every step he took, a constant reminder of the stakes they were facing. If they didn't make it out, all of this would be for nothing. The Foundation would track them down, and they would be lost, buried under the weight of their enemies' reach. "We're not going to make it," Noah muttered, his voice strained as he glanced over his shoulder. Iris didn't answer immediately. She kept her eyes forward, her face set in a determined mask. But Noah could see the doubt in her eyes, just barely. She was a master at hiding her emotions, but this time, even she couldn't disguise the fear that had crept in. "Keep moving," she ordered, her voice sharp as she pushed forward, never slowing down. Noah pushed himself harder, his legs burning, his heart racing. They had to outrun them. They had to survive. The tunnel seemed to wind and twist, but it offered little shelter. The dim light from the emergency lamps above them flickered, casting long shadows across the walls, distorting their path and making it hard to see ahead. Every corner could hide an enemy, every turn could lead to a trap. They were being hunted. Suddenly, a loud shout echoed from behind them, followed by the sound of gunfire. Noah's blood ran cold as he turned his head just in time to see a flash of light, another shot, this one narrowly missing him as it ricocheted off the tunnel wall. They were shooting at them. "Faster!" Iris yelled, her voice cutting through the chaos. "They're closing in." Noah's adrenaline kicked into overdrive. He pushed himself harder, faster, his feet pounding against the cold, hard ground. His mind raced through the possible outcomes. The safe house was their only hope. But could they make it before the soldiers caught up? Could they outrun them in this narrow, labyrinthine passage? "This way!" Iris shouted, abruptly veering to the left and darting down another passage. Noah followed without question. They couldn't afford to waste time. The sound of footsteps grew louder, the soldiers gaining on them. Every second felt like an eternity. As they rounded another corner, the tunnel seemed to open up ahead of them. The faint glow of an exit sign illuminated the far end, signaling the way out. The safe house was just beyond that door, if they could make it. "It's right there," Iris said, her voice breathless but determined. Noah could see it now too. The light at the end of the tunnel, the promise of safety. They just had to reach it. But as they neared the exit, the ground beneath them suddenly shook. It wasn't an earthquake, Noah knew that much. No, it was something else. The tunnel walls reverberated with the sound of explosions, followed by a deep rumble that seemed to come from below. The ground cracked, and dust fell from the ceiling. "What the hell is that?" Noah shouted, stumbling forward as the tunnel trembled. Iris didn't answer. Instead, she grabbed Noah's arm, pulling him toward the exit with renewed urgency. "We don't have time for this," she yelled, her eyes wide with fear. "Keep moving." Noah's mind was racing. What was going on? Why was the Foundation sabotaging their only escape route? The rumbling intensified, and Noah realized, with a sickening feeling, that they weren't the only ones in this tunnel. The Foundation had already prepared a contingency plan to stop them, and it was all unfolding right in front of them. They were trapped. The exit door was only a few yards away now, but the ground beneath them was buckling. Dust and debris rained down from the ceiling as the tunnel began to collapse, piece by piece. The explosion they had heard earlier had been a diversion, a way to ensure they couldn't escape. "Go!" Iris shouted, shoving Noah forward toward the exit. Noah didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward the door, his legs pumping furiously, his mind screaming at him to reach safety. Behind them, the sounds of the tunnel crumbling grew louder, more deafening. The walls were closing in. He reached the door and yanked it open, barely pausing to look behind him. Iris was right on his heels, but just as she reached the threshold, the ceiling above them gave way, sending a shower of rubble crashing down. A piece of metal struck Iris in the side, and she gasped, falling to the ground. "Noah!" she screamed, her voice strained with pain. Without thinking, Noah rushed back to her, pulling her to her feet and supporting her weight. He could feel the heat of the fire from the explosion on his skin, the smoke choking his lungs, but he didn't care. Iris was hurt, and they needed to move. They had no time to waste. "Come on, we can't stay here," Noah said, his voice frantic. Iris nodded, her face pale but determined. She gritted her teeth and pushed herself to her feet, leaning on Noah for support. They stumbled out of the tunnel and into the open air, the cool night a welcome relief after the suffocating darkness below. But there was no time to rest. The Foundation was still coming for them. The only question now was whether they could outrun them long enough to reach safety. As they disappeared into the night, the sound of approaching vehicles could be heard in the distance. The chase wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. The night air felt heavier now, thick with tension as Noah and Iris moved through the dense trees, their steps hurried and uneven. The city lights were distant, fading behind them as they pushed deeper into the wilderness, hoping to lose the Foundation's pursuit. But Noah knew, deep down, that the moment they had stepped out of that tunnel, they had entered the final stage of the game. There was no more running. The showdown was coming. "We can't outrun them much longer," Noah said, his voice laced with exhaustion. Iris, still clutching her side where she had been struck, didn't answer immediately. Her face was drawn with pain, but there was a fire in her eyes that kept her moving. The core was still in Noah's bag, its weight a constant reminder of what they were carrying, the key to everything, and yet the cause of all their trouble. "We don't have a choice," Iris replied, her voice steady but strained. "We keep moving. We need to get to the safe house." Noah glanced at her, his eyes narrowed with concern. They were both injured, exhausted, and dangerously close to their limit. But Iris's resolve was unshaken. He knew she wasn't just talking about reaching the safe house. She was talking about the mission, about stopping the Foundation. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was the final act of their rebellion. They continued on, their breaths heavy in the cool air, the trees casting long shadows across their path. Every now and then, Noah would glance over his shoulder, the distant sound of vehicles growing louder. The Foundation wasn't far behind. "We don't have much time," Noah muttered, trying to push the fear out of his voice. "They're getting closer." Iris didn't answer. She was too focused, too determined. But Noah could see the sweat glistening on her forehead, the strain in her posture. She was pushing herself harder than she should have been. He could only imagine how much the injury to her side was hurting her, but she wasn't slowing down. She couldn't. None of them could afford to. "We'll make it," Iris said, her tone clipped. "We have to." Suddenly, the sound of distant gunfire shattered the quiet night, followed by the roar of engines revving. Noah's blood ran cold. "They're getting closer," he said, his voice now urgent. "We're out of time." Without warning, the sound of tires screeching against the dirt road reached their ears, and a sleek, black vehicle appeared at the edge of the forest, headlights blinding. The Foundation's operatives were closing in. Iris pulled Noah into the cover of the trees, her breathing quick and shallow. They crouched behind a thick trunk, trying to steady themselves, trying to stay hidden. But Noah's heart was pounding in his chest. The chase had come to this, a final confrontation in the heart of the wilderness. They were trapped. The vehicle came to a screeching halt a few yards away, its engine growling as several figures emerged. These weren't just any operatives. They were the Foundation's elite. Well-equipped, highly trained, and relentless. Noah and Iris knew they didn't stand a chance if they were caught in open ground. "We have to fight," Noah whispered, his voice tight with fear and determination. Iris nodded, her jaw set in grim resolve. She pulled out a small device from her jacket, pressing a few buttons as she activated it. A soft hum filled the air as the device emitted a signal that would disable the vehicle's electrical systems, but it wouldn't stop them from tracking their movements. "We need to get to that safe house," Iris said, a dark glint in her eyes. "And we're going to need a distraction." Noah's mind raced as he scanned their surroundings. The safe house was still a few miles away, but the only way they were going to make it there now was by fighting their way through. The Foundation wasn't going to let them go without a fight, and Noah had no intention of making it easy for them. "You think we can take them?" Noah asked, his voice low. Iris turned to him, a fierce determination in her eyes. "We don't have a choice," she said simply. "But we're not just taking them down. We're going to make sure they never find us again." Noah swallowed hard. It wasn't just about escaping anymore, it was about ending it, once and for all. The Foundation had gone too far, and now it was their turn to fight back. Without warning, Iris made a break for it, darting through the trees with incredible speed. Noah hesitated for only a second before following her, his heart pounding in his chest. The sounds of the operatives searching for them grew louder, but Noah could feel the adrenaline pumping through his veins. This was it. The moment they had prepared for. The final battle. Iris reached the edge of a small clearing first, crouching behind a fallen log to catch her breath. Noah joined her, his eyes scanning the area for their enemies. He could see movement ahead, a pair of operatives had just entered the clearing, their weapons raised and ready. "On my mark," Iris whispered, her voice steady despite the situation. We take them down together. Noah nodded, his grip tightening on the small pistol he had pulled from his bag. The weight of it was comforting now, the metal cold in his hand. They had one chance. They had to make it count. Iris waited for a moment, her eyes locked on the nearest operative. The tension in the air was suffocating. Then, with a quick motion, she gestured for Noah to move. Now, she commanded. Noah lunged forward, firing in quick succession as the operatives barely had time to react. One of them fell, but the other fired back, the bullet grazing Noah's shoulder. He winced but kept moving, his body driven by pure instinct. Iris was already on the second operative, taking him down with a swift, calculated strike. The fight was brutal, the sounds of gunfire and shouting filling the night air. But Noah and Iris were unstoppable. They had come too far to let the Foundation win now. In a matter of seconds, the clearing fell silent. The operatives were down. But the danger wasn't over. We need to move. Now. Noah said, his voice urgent. Iris nodded, her breath ragged but determined. They had just survived the first wave, but the Foundation's reinforcements would be here soon. They had no time to waste. They turned and ran, deeper into the forest, the sounds of pursuit already closing in. But for the first time in days, Noah felt something that had been missing, hope. The battle wasn't over, but they were still alive, and that meant they had a chance. They would make it to the safe house. And they would finish what they started. The safe house was in sight. Noah and Iris stumbled toward it, the weight of their exhaustion almost unbearable, but the flickering light in the distance kept them going. They had been running for what felt like hours, but time had become a blur. The night had swallowed them whole, the dark trees and dense foliage making the forest feel like an endless maze. Almost there, Iris muttered under her breath, her voice tight with pain but full of determination. Noah's hand gripped his shoulder, where the bullet had grazed him earlier, but the pain was the least of his concerns now. They had just survived the first wave of Foundation operatives, but they knew reinforcements would be coming soon. And when they did, it wouldn't matter how far they ran. They had to get inside the safe house, secure the data core, and make sure the Foundation could never find them again. The small cabin that had served as their haven for so long now stood before them. It looked abandoned, almost forgotten, like a relic of another life. Yet this place, this fragile safe haven, was their last line of defense. They had reached the end of the line. Iris led the way, pulling open the heavy door to the cabin. They stepped inside, the familiar scent of wood and dust filling their lungs as they slammed the door shut behind them. The room was dark, but the faint glow of a dying fire in the corner offered a slight comfort. "You're injured," Noah said, his voice laced with concern as he watched Iris limp toward the small table at the center of the room. The bullet wound in her side was worse than he had thought. Blood had soaked through her jacket, and her movements were stiff. Iris shrugged it off. "I'll be fine. We don't have time for that." Noah shook his head, unwilling to let her continue. "You're not fine. We need to patch you up before." "No," she cut him off sharply, her eyes locked onto his. "There's no time for that. We need to finish this." There was a fierceness in her gaze that made Noah pause. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about winning. And no matter the cost, Iris was determined to see it through. They both knew what was at stake. The data core in Noah's bag wasn't just a piece of technology. It was the key to everything. If the Foundation got their hands on it, it would be the end. They could manipulate the world's resources, control governments, and rewrite the future with the flick of a switch. The only way to stop them was to destroy the core. To make sure the technology could never be used. "We're going to need to destroy it," Iris said, as if reading Noah's mind. She was already pulling open the hidden compartment in the cabin, where they had stashed explosives. The plan had always been to destroy the core if things went south, but they had hoped to find a way to use it to their advantage. Now that was no longer an option. Noah nodded grimly. We can't let them use it. This ends tonight. The quiet tension between them was broken by the sudden sound of vehicles approaching. The unmistakable roar of engines and the heavy thrum of military-grade machines drew closer, louder with every passing second. They're here, Noah said, his pulse quickening. Iris turned toward him, her expression set in a mask of determination. It's now or never. They moved quickly, placing the explosives around the cabin, carefully positioning them where they would cause the most damage. The timer on the explosives was set to give them just enough time to escape, but not enough for the Foundation soldiers to reach them. Noah glanced at Iris one last time, seeing the toll this had taken on her. Her breathing was labored, her face pale, but her focus was unwavering. She had never been more committed to the cause. We're going to make it, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding outside. Noah didn't answer, but he knew she was right. They had come this far. They couldn't afford to fail now. The door to the cabin suddenly slammed open with a deafening crash, and a group of Foundation operatives stormed inside, their guns raised and ready. Stop right there, one of them shouted, his voice cold and commanding. Noah and Iris didn't hesitate. In a flash, Iris lunged for the detonator, her hand slamming down on the button just as Noah ducked behind a nearby table, pulling out his weapon. The explosion that followed was deafening, rocking the cabin to its core. The walls trembled, the floor beneath their feet cracking as the entire structure seemed to collapse in on itself. The sound of the blast echoed through the woods, a violent reminder that the Foundation had been defeated. But there was no time to celebrate. Noah's heart pounded in his chest as he scrambled to his feet and pulled Iris toward the exit. The cabin was coming apart around them, and the Foundation soldiers were too close. We need to go. Noah shouted, urgency in his voice. Iris nodded, her face grim as she supported herself on Noah. Together, they staggered into the night, their only goal now to escape the blast radius and find a way to disappear for good. Behind them, the flames from the explosion lit up the sky, casting an eerie glow across the forest. The Foundation was gone. Their pursuit had ended. But as Noah and Iris disappeared into the darkness, they both knew this was only the beginning. Where do we go now? Noah asked, his voice hoarse with emotion. Iris looked at him, a tired but satisfied smile tugging at her lips. We rebuild. We start again. And for the first time since all of this had begun, Noah truly believed that they might have a chance at a new beginning. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?